What is happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. Today we're installing the Fuel-It ethanol analyzer. This is pretty important for me because, you know, I run E50 a lot. In order to make sure that I have the proper E50 mix, you need something like an ethanol analyzer so you can accurately mix your fuels. Right now during the week I run a 93 pump gas tune, and then during the weekends I typically run an ethanol and E-blend tune that's somewhere in like the E40s. I'd probably say like an E45 tune. It's not quite E50, a little bit higher than E30. It's somewhere in that ballpark. But right now we've mostly just been mixing fuels and sort of guessing where we're at. It's nice to have an ethanol analyzer so you know exactly where you're at. In addition to the Fuel-It system telling us our ethanol mixture that we have going on in the car, this also allows us to run a flex fuel system when the tuning platform of our choice comes out with that capability. Now right now boot mode and MHD do not have flex fuel setup, but they will in the future, relatively soon for the B58s and the Supras. I believe if you have Ecutech, they are already adaptive to flex fuel, so you can run that on the Supras. But I tune with boot mode and MHD, so we need to have some kind of system set up for that. That's why we went with Fuel-It. John over at CES actually runs the Fuel-It system on his car. Loves it, no issues with it. It's also one of the more affordable options. So if you guys are interested in buying it, I'll have it linked down below. We're gonna install it, kind of show you how it works. It's also Bluetooth capable, so you actually bring up the app on your phone and it tells you right there, right on your phone, which ethanol mixture you're running. Let's hop inside and get this installed. All right, Johnny.
Hello again.
Back on the vlog.
So basically what we're talking about is reading E-content in the car. What E-content is, it's basically ethanol. A lot of people have been talking about running E30, E40, E50 blends, and for those of you who aren't really familiar with what that means is you have regular gas like 93 octane, 100 octane, whatever, if you're using race fuels. And then you have the ethanol, which is E85 that you can normally get at the pump. So a lot of people talk about, oh, I'm putting E85 in the car. There is a difference between an E85 fuel and regular pump gas fuel, as we call it. Normal 93 octane, for example, has about 10% ethanol content. It's kind of a standard that has been incorporated in the past years. It is a blend because it is technically E10. When you talk about it in ethanol blend terms. E85 is in its basic purest form that you can get from a gas station. That is 85% ethanol. And then you can go a step further and buy more potent fuels that are ethanol content. Ignite Fuels is a fuel that we use. Thanks, Ignite. They have a E90, which is what we use. It's called Ignite Red. The octane content is, I guess, what we need to be discussing about the most with E-fuels, because E85 is, what is it, around 105 octane, I believe, and the E90 fuel is actually 114 octane. There is also a cost benefit why a lot of people choose to go E85 because, well, not anymore, but a while ago, E85 was, like $2 a gallon-ish, or so, maybe $2.50, whereas regular pump gas, especially 93, was approaching $3 mark plus, and you get a lot more octane, so you're getting a good bang for your buck. The problem with E85 from the pump is that it's not always actually E85. So this is kind of where we get into why you want an ethanol content analyzer on the car. The old-fashioned way to do it is to take some of the fuel, pour it in one of those little meters, do your water, do your ethanol, and see the actual ethanol content. Why is that important? Because if you don't have enough ethanol in your fuel and you have a tune in your car that is designed for a specific octane, in other words, E85, well, full E85, and you only have E60 or E70 in there, that can cause problems, especially with running and detonation and possible, failures with the motor. That is why this is important. It'll tell you the exact E-content that you have in the car so that you'll know if you need to add more or have enough ethanol in the car to run the tuning that's on the car. The next step of that is flex fuel tuning. And that's the other very important part of all of this that is just now coming out in all the different tuning platforms, some that are already out and some that are still developing. Flex fuel gives you the capability to actually run any type of content in the car, and the tune itself has the capability to read the content and adjust the tune accordingly based on the percentage of ethanol you have in the tank. So let's say you went and you filled up at the pump and you ended up with E60. You wouldn't have to worry if you had a flex fuel tune in the car, because it would automatically adjust for the amount of ethanol content that it sees via the ethanol content analyzer that is installed in the car. The e-content analyzer has an output signal that you can connect to whatever platform that you end up using, and it will be able to read the e-content and use that in order to adjust the tuning accordingly. One last thing, getting back to the whole e-blend question, a lot of customers always ask us, what does that mean? What does that mean? All that means is that there's a specific blend of regular fuel versus ethanol. So let's say you want to do an E30 tune on your car. For example, when we run the MHD tunes on the cars, they have an off-the-shelf map that is actually an E30 map. So for those of you who are like, okay, well, how do I do that? E30 is a blend of E85 and 93 octane. So if you have 3 to 4 gallons of 93 octane in your car and you pour 1 gallon of E85 in, that roughly gives you about an E30 blend. It's basically just a mix of E85 versus regular pump gas. You can vary the mix content to vary your E content. So if you do 1 gallon of 93, 1 gallon of E85, you've got an E50 mix. So if you want an E50 tune, that's what you put in the car. And then if you have your e-content analyzer, you can read that instantly and not have to guess on what mixture you have in the car. It'll be right there for you. And then taking it the next step further is to be able to tune knowing the e-content in the car and be able to run any kind of mix you want. Obviously there are benefits to ethanol because of the octane, and that's why you can make more power with it. It does run a little bit cooler than regular fuels too, which is helpful for detonation, etc., when you're trying to make power out of the car. The only drawback to running E85 or an E-blend is the fact that you have a higher volume of fuel requirement when you're flowing ethanol. So an E85 tune typically is about 35% more fuel flow per volume versus regular pump gas. So that's why sometimes you're limited, especially with direct injected cars and the high pressure fuel pump systems, with how much ethanol or E-blend you can actually run in the car before it starts dropping rail pressure, because the volume requirements just cannot be met. So that's why you bump up the fuel pressure with either low pressure side or add upgraded high pressure fuel pumps, so that when you do run ethanol, you can actually meet the requirements that the fuel system needs with the higher volume that is needed to run ethanol fuel.
You know, I run E50 in this car, E50-ish. What would you recommend for like oil change intervals? Like, does that get into the oil? Does it thin out the oil? Do you have to change the thickness of the oil that you run? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So typically we still run the OEM oil, but as you go up in horsepower, it's usually recommended to run just a slightly thicker oil. As far as oil interval changes, we do recommend doing them a lot more frequently, because ethanol does blend in with the oil a lot easier than regular pump fuels do. And if any of you guys have noticed that, sometimes you'll get that ethanol smell even in your oil when you're changing it, depending on how long it's been since you've changed your oil. It is always a good idea to go ahead and change your oil much more frequently, especially if you're running very high blends or 100% E85 or E90 in the car, just because that can actually dilute into the oil and can actually, thin out the oil. So
what happens, I mean, for the people that don't know, if it does thin out the oil, what does that mean exactly?
Well, it means more wear and tear on your motor internals. It's not doing its job to lubricate properly. It's basically like watering down your oil, which is bad. So you definitely want to get that changed out and put good fresh oil in there. And depending on how much the car is driven, how hard it's driven, is how much you should change the oil at specific intervals. The only drawback that really is part of the whole ethanol craze is the fact that it can actually denature in your tank, especially ones from the gas station pumps. That's why they're a little bit cheaper. But over time, the ethanol content can actually absorb moisture, which decreases its ethanol content and also its potency. What happens there? You can blow your motor up again because you don't have the proper E content. One of the reasons why we use processed fuels like Ignite E90 is that it has a much longer shelf life, so we can actually store it and keep it in the car for extended periods of time. Ignite themselves has said that their drums can last 4 to 5 years if sealed up properly, and in the tank it can literally sit for almost a year and still maintain its potency. But I would not trust that with a normal pump gas E85, because within a few months you can actually lose a lot of the ethanol content in there, and that can cause problems, which is another good reason why you should have an E-content analyzer on your car. That way, when you do crank up, if the car has been sitting for an extended period of time, it will read and tell you just exactly how much E you have in your tank.
If you guys are like local to Charlotte and you want to come in here and you want to do the exact same thing that we're doing today, you can do that with John. Once MHD and Boot Mode do come out with the Supra B58 capabilities to run flex fuel, we will be doing that. We probably will need something more than just this kit in order to do that.
Yeah, well, you'll have to integrate to make sure that it actually works with the specific tuning platforms. There's a couple other ones that are out and about that are already gaining some traction, but I'm sure this is going to be the next step in the wave of tuning progression that's been happening with these platforms.
But for now, this allows us to actually see what kind of mixture we have in the car. So it's a relatively easy install. He's done this, like I said, he's running this on his car. These guys have done this numerous times. So we're gonna have them come over. They're gonna start installing it. I'm gonna video it for you guys and then kind of talk about the install, but for the most part, it's pretty simple. So first thing before we actually get into this, you're going to want to go ahead and disconnect the battery. He's going to pop off the negative terminal. It's a 10mm in the back. And then we will go ahead and get into the install, which for the most part, from what I understand, it's pretty easy. I did see that Speed Industry made a video on this, so shout out to those guys. They made it look real simple. Other than that, you can really just buy this kit and do it yourself. It's not too difficult. And then also you want to download the Fuel It app. I believe it's like $4.99 or something. And then once you have the kit, once you have the app, once it's installed, good to go.
Actual analyzer, your wiring, your Bluetooth module that Fuel It includes with theirs, which plugs in and then allows you to use their app to patch right in and get your e-content on your phone with their app. Basically, it's kind of just like a forward motion to push back and then pull. And she's off, so now I just got to do the one in the back.
These are the little clips that you have to remove in order to disconnect that fuel line.
The right way, obviously, is to route it underneath there. It's in there, like that. This clips in like this. You make absolutely sure that it's going in the right way with the blue connector.
So here is the factory fuel line that we took off, and then this is basically replacing that with the analyzer module right here.
Install like this. You put the elbow piece here and the straight here with the blue connector. A little tight back here, but it's literally kind of like that. And it's in.
Nice. Back there.
And then the rest is just doing the wiring harness. So basically you're going to clip that in, power ground, and then if you had an auxiliary connector to connect to a flex kit or another analog sensor, you could do that. But obviously, since we have Bluetooth capability with this, it will show up on your phone and give you the e-content. Fuel It actually does integrate with JB4 also, which we did not mention, so we need to say that. I mean, I think that one goes on like pin 14 in theirs, and it will show up the e-content on the JB4 module. So if you have JB4 on the car and you have their Bluetooth capability, the e-content will show up with that system too.
All right, so to show you guys what we got here, we ended up grounding over in the corner right there. And then you can see the power line is running through here. And then if you look at the actual line for the Bluetooth analyzer, it runs across here. I ended up putting a little slit in the felt cover in the back, and we ran it underneath, but a zip tie right there and a zip tie right there just to keep it up. And then you'll see it runs underneath into the plug, which tucks nicely back there, and then the actual analyzer is over here in this area. And we really didn't feel like we needed to secure that at all. It felt like it was pretty secure on its own. The lines kind of put it in the place that it needs to be without having to do much. And that's really about it. It's that simple. So he's popping the battery back on, the negative on the battery. But what we are gonna do is we're gonna crank it over before we mix any fuels or anything and just make sure that it is in fact running and that there aren't any leaks. And then I guess we'll show them the app too, and kind of load that up. I'll have a link down in the description to the actual kit, and then a direct link to the app too that you can download. So the app was $4.99, just to let you guys know. Depending on when you're watching this, that might change, but I just paid $4.99 for it. So John's gonna crank it, and then Cademan is going to check for leaks, just to make sure. Making sure the lines are good, nothing is out of place, no fuel spitting anywhere. Looks good. So from here, we will actually grab some of the Ignite and then go ahead and mix it in. I'll show you guys the app and kind of what everything looks like. And that's what the app looks like once you download it. So all we did was, the car is in diagnostic mode, but you don't have to have the car all the way on. You can just get the power on. And then literally all you do is open the app. You don't have to connect anything with Bluetooth, select anything. You just turn on Bluetooth and then go ahead and open the app and then hit connect at the bottom, and it'll bring up your ethanol content. So you'll see E11 here. So when I'm running 93 octane, which is what I'm running right now, that is E10. So when you see E11, that means that maybe there's a hint of some
additional ethanol, E-blend mixes that you probably had residual in the tank from before.
Yeah, that would make sense. So what we're gonna do next here is we're gonna go ahead and mix in the Ignite that John has here at the shop that I usually mix in for my E-blend tune. Now, when I say E-blend tune, I have a boot mode tune with Jeff Payne that is E50. And this tune that we're running with MHD, we think we mix somewhere in the E40s. Yeah,
it's about E40.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the E40s. So we're gonna just go with probably E40-ish, somewhere in there. But we'll be able to show you guys the actual number on here and the fact that it is changing and reading the ethanol, and then we'll be good. And that's the great thing about having this. You know, you're not guessing anymore. You have the actual number right in front of you. So if you're in the Fuel It app and you got it up right here, you open this up. So you're gonna have some settings in here that you can adjust. Let's say you're in Europe or Canada and you want to do measurements in liters, you can do that. Temperature in Celsius, these are just some different units. These are just some different units that you can put into the phone. And then also the tank size. So you're gonna see that I have 14. I think the tank size on the Supra is actually 13.7. But they don't let you put decimals in this, so you just kind of round up to the closest one. After you have your settings set up, go back to the main page here, and then you can swipe over, and you'll see that you have the ethanol content and then the fuel temperature. For this page here in the Fuel It app, you can actually figure out how much ethanol content you want to put in for the desired mix. So if we say that I have about 5 gallons of 93 in the car, then we will go fuel gauge up to, so we'll say 5 gallons. And then current ethanol content is E11. And then what we want is, we'll say E40. So this is gonna tell us how much E85 to put into the car.
So E90 is a little more potent, so we use a little bit less E90 to get to the desired E content level.
Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and bring up my MHD app, which is gonna tell me specifically how many gallons of 93 that we have in the car, and then we'll go ahead and grab the E90 and mix that in into the car, and then we'll be able to see exactly what our mix is. All right, so we have MHD up here, so 16 liters will come out to roughly 4 gallons.
Basically 4 gallons, 4.2 gallons.
4.2 gallons, so how much of your Ignite shall we put in?
To get to E40, probably gonna be 2, maybe a little bit more, maybe 2.5. So we're gonna be flashing in the custom map that I have. CES Supra E30
version 6 tune here, and that is the one that's a little bumped up from E30. It just says E30, but it's not really E30. Map right, and done. It's that quick. MHD flash is super fast, so we're gonna let that do its thing, and then let's go ahead and throw in the Ignite content, and I'll show you guys the analyzer. So it's always interesting once you start adding things like this to your car. You know, you just have a little more stuff that you kind of have to mess with to get it perfect. But I have learned over time that switching maps from, you know, 93 to E50 or E40 on the weekends, it's just easier to have the analyzer because I know exactly how much ethanol is in there. You know, when I'm out like at a pump station and I need to put in a little more 93 or a little more Ignite, then I can actually see how much I have. Usually we're just kind of like guessing based off of how much gas is in there and what we're going to be putting in. So this is definitely nice to have.
2.5 gallons. And also, if you ever do want to go into liters, it was 10 liters. So for every 16 liters that you have in your car, if you add 10 liters of E90, you should have E40.
All right, so we're gonna actually hop in the car. There's two ways that you can do this. You can just turn the car on and let it idle, and slowly that ethanol content will pick up and mix in, or you can drive it and it'll actually change much faster. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna have John drive the car, and then I'll hop in the passenger seat and film the content actually rising, show you guys the mixture that we have.
Right.
So loud. There it goes. Lifting up. Put us at about E45.
And usually what it'll do is it'll go up and then it'll come back down.
Oh yeah, there it goes.
Regulates, so.
That's so nice to have though.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, so John was saying that he actually has a mount for his phone right here, so he just mounts it up there, which I should probably do. So it's kind of bouncing around a little bit on us, but we literally just started driving. This will actually accurately mix in over time here.
Yeah, by the time we get back to the shop, it should stabilize pretty much where it needs to be.
And so in this kind of situation, you know, if you end up with a little too much, you can always just go to the pump and throw in a little bit more 93. But even at E48, it shouldn't be a problem. Like this car, well, it's going back down.
Yeah,
but even at a little bit higher content, it's not really going to be an issue. Like the car is it's probably going to run better, if anything.
Well, you know, the car can actually handle fully 85 with the current fuel system.
Mm-hmm.
But typically E50 is the magic number for this car, roughly. As far as making power from what everybody
Oh, she's going back down.
Yeah, like I said, it kind of fluctuates because, you know, the ethanol is still mixing in the tank.
Yeah.
So as it continues to mix and go through the system.
Yeah, there it goes. There it goes. So, and we just literally went down the block. Like, it's only been a minute we've been driving, and it's already back to, and there it goes between 41 and 42. So that's probably right where it's at, which seems perfect, which is exactly what we were shooting for.
Yeah,
so
we were shooting for E40. So
yeah,
I mean,
that makes complete sense. Tell me what you think about it.
Well, probably need to. Oh yeah, dude, she feels good. Very smooth. Oh yeah. I mean, that's moving, man.
You like it?
Oh, it feels great. I love it.
That's the first time I've been in the car where someone else has taken pulls before.
That's smooth. It feels fantastic. Great power.
Yeah, it's very smooth, man. Like this car with the E blend tune that we have on it is like so good.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Forgot we have traction control on.
Passenger seat. It's set up, man. It took a long time for us to get it to this point, but this thing is like, all we need now is that snail, that pure snail. So the ethanol is just a little under E40. Looks like we're at E37.
So it did blend a little bit more.
It did blend a little bit more. When we were originally flashing in this tune that we have now and data logging, going back and forth, We actually changed the ethanol content a little bit and went a little bit higher because we felt that the car actually was performing better on the dyno. And you could see it was pulling timing a little bit, so we put in a little more, cleaned it up a little bit up top, and then we ended up with like an E40 somewhere in there mix. Because originally it was an E30 map, but we went a little bit higher because we felt like the car just responded better. So that's the that is the Fuel It kit for you guys. Real easy to install. Shout out to these guys over at CES. If you guys need any tuning, installs, performance, anything like that on your BMW or your Supra, go ahead and hit them up. They can help you out here in Monroe, Charlotte, North Carolina. But we're gonna wrap this one up. Anything that you guys want to buy that you saw in this video is gonna be linked down below, as well as their information. But thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.